Coming up on Mayo Clinic Q&A.
This has been a long journey for all of us. I think the things that I look back on are the amazing speed with which science moved. I mean, when you think about it, as we said way back, the canvas regarding COVID-19 was absolutely blank.
Today on Mayo Clinic Q&A, we'll take a look back on 2021 and review the COVID-19 pandemic with infectious disease specialist Dr. Gregory Poland. He'll address what we've learned and give us his thoughts on what to expect in the year ahead.
Best modeling shows that, unfortunately, in the U.S., we are going to have a major surge of Omicron. It's doubling about every 2.5 days. For the unvaccinated, I don't know what to call it other than a tragedy, even if they've escaped it so far. For people who have misinformation and think, because I've been infected previously, I'm safe, they're sadly wrong in the face of Omicron.
Welcome everyone to Mayo Clinic Q&A. I'm your host, Dr. Helena Gazelka. Can you believe that we have reached the end of 2021? Today, Dr. Greg Poland is with me, and we thought it would be fun to look back at the year a little bit and to look forward to 2022. Thanks for being here, Greg.
My pleasure. It is hard to believe that 2021 seems to have sped by.
It sure has. They go faster and faster every year, it seems like. Greg, let's look back. What an incredible year we have had. We've had vaccines and variants in the news. When you look back, what do you remember the most about 2021?
Well, it's an interesting thing. A friend of mine said, "You've been on a long journey with this," and he hand carved a walking stick for me.
Wow.
After all the work we've done on COVID, and it represents that this has been a long journey for all of us. I think the things that I look back on are the amazing speed with which science moved. I mean, when you think about it, as we said way back, the canvas regarding COVID-19 was absolutely blank.
Right.
When we kind of woke up to this in early 2020. And when you think that we've had antivirals, 3 now, monoclonal antibodies, 3 vaccines licensed or under EUA in the US, that's really incredible to think of.
And that doesn't even encompass the medical literature, Greg.
No, that's right.
Publications about long haulers, and it's phenomenal.
It's incredible, thousands upon thousands. But at the same time, with all that progress, the thing that has weighed the most heavily on me is from the time we started till today, about 1 out of every 396 Americans has died. Mm-hmm. When you think about when the first vaccines came out a little over a year ago, 300,000 Americans had died. Since then, 500,000 Americans have died, and those are for the most part preventable. And that just weighs on my heart, and we still are experiencing that. I think from a science point of view, we have never seen the evolution of a virus this quickly. I mean, we are on our 5th major variant inside a little more than a year. That is really astounding. And I think the other thing that will forever change pandemic and epidemic preparedness is nobody had really accounted for what I call the distorting effects of human behavior. Right on the surface of this, with mass distancing, then add vaccines, this is eminently controllable. Mm-hmm. But we made a collective decision not to do that by avoiding masking and distancing, by not getting, even a year on after vaccines have been available, only some 60% of America is vaccinated who are eligible. Only a third have gotten boosters. That's more recent. So, a lot of work to do in trust, equity, human behavior. So it has exposed, I think, both the incredible feats of science, and at the same time, humans haven't changed much in hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of work to do in that regard.
So, Greg, it is hard to think of any area of life that hasn't been changed by COVID. The economy, the political scene, how we live our lives personally, how we work and function as a society. It's really just amazing.
Yeah.
And let's talk a little bit about how life has changed over the past year. You know, I'm always looking for silver linings, and I do see silver linings in this.
Sure.
I think that some good can come out of something bad. And what are the biggest life changes that you've noted?
I think an awareness of how fragile life and human health is. It has been a profound wake up. I mean, I've spent my career dealing with vaccine preventable infectious diseases. I can't even count the number of tabletop exercises. And again, I'll go back to human behavior seems to change with the political landscape, with economics. And we're going to have to set aside what I've called our cultural narcissism, our me rather than we attitude. And I hope that will be a change for the better. You know, there's still endless arguing over masks, but it's hard to dismiss the fact, isn't it, that when we were wearing masks, there was no flu. I mean, there was no flu. So we know that they're effective. We have the best real world effectiveness possible. I think we've also learned that if your life is built upon the amusement park of life rather than the close personal relationships with family, friends, whatever type of church you might be involved in, etc. When those things are stripped away, we've seen where there's no resilience. We've seen the suicide and substance abuse rate skyrocket.
Yeah.
And those are sad things. So I think there's, you know, you see the bad of something like this, but it also serves as sort of a lamppost to understand what we have forgotten, what we have ignored, and what needs to be paid attention to. Schooling, education, as you said, work, the economy. I personally cannot think of a major area of life that has not been touched by this. And as I say, I think good things will come out of it. Now, as long as there's internet access, for example, you can have school anywhere in the world from any instructor. I mean, that is miraculous. I hope, I doubt it in the US, but I hope that we'll be wise enough to wear masks during the winter time, for example. But there's another piece of this that we just simply are going to have to reconcile. You and I won't be here, Helena, but our great grandchildren will be getting immunized against this virus. It's by failing to control this very early on, we've seen how it continues to mutate, and you know, God willing, it will become something more akin to influenza and a little better controllable. But my evidence for that is that when you and I got our flu vaccine this year, we were being immunized against a variant of flu virus that first arose in 1918. So we're getting immunized over 100 years later with a variant of that virus.
That's fascinating.
All of this is fascinating.
It really is. You know, we work in healthcare, Greg. So one of the things that I have noted is a pulling together to take care of our patients and to take care of each other as workers. There's sort of a mantra in healthcare that apparently we're never supposed to become ill. But but I have seen people pull together because kids are quarantined because they're too young to get vaccinated. So they're having to stay home from daycare for weeks. Well, coworkers have to cover that. And, family members are ill. So someone needs to stay with them, and people are covering for each other. And so I think that the capacity of graciousness and kindness has also been expanded, like the Grinch's heart growing 2 sizes larger.
That's very nicely said, Helena. And you anticipate what I was going to say is I hope will be the final silver lining.
Yes.
I think that the magnanimity of how healthcare providers have sacrificed, in many cases, their own health, their own lives, for the care of strangers who nonetheless are our patients, who have not taken care of themselves in terms of getting immunized or wearing masks, and yet we take care of them. I hope that the Nobel Peace Prize or the Person of the Year, whatever category you choose, I hope it will be the healthcare provider.
Yeah, that's a great point. Greg, I think one of the big challenges, and you and I hear this from our listeners all of the time in emails and such, one of the big challenges during COVID has been that information is moving so quickly. And so you can get behind if you, don't stay up on things. But the other side of that is that mis and disinformation are also rampant in the news, on the internet. And how should our listeners know that they're getting credible information when they hear things?
This is of course has been an amazing issue. A piece of mis or disinformation seems to propagate about 1,000 times faster than truth.
Yeah.
And once somebody has bought into that, they kind of are in a rabbit hole that they find very, very difficult to get out of, often can't get out of until they themselves are infected or hospitalized or even dying, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. So, how will an intelligent society handle that? Just like you can't stand up in a theater and yell fire when there's no fire because of the harm to people. I hope we will take steps to say that mis and disinformation makes you liable for injuries that are sustained by others. That's different than free speech allowing questioning. That's very different. People seek to make them the same, and they are fundamentally different. But when you give knowingly mis and disinformation or wild speculations that go on to harm people, that's just unacceptable. And so I think one of the things that all of us are doing, this podcast is a good example, is how do we get credible information out quickly? And I am very proud of the fact that we have diligently done these every week. We were the first ones to recognize and say publicly that this was a pandemic, and we have been extraordinarily transparent. When we don't know or when we're speculating, we say so. Mm-hmm. And yet, at the same time, attempt to give the best advice possible, given the data that we have. So I'm proud of the work we've done together.
All right, Greg, 2022. What do you think? What do you see coming down the pike in 2022? What's going to happen with COVID?
Yeah.
Now I'm really putting you on the spot.
It gets really hard to predict the future, doesn't it? So it does vis-a-vis what I just said. This is speculation.
Yep.
The best modeling shows that, unfortunately, in the U.S., we are going to have a major surge of Omicron. It's doubling about every 2.5 days. For the unvaccinated, I don't know what to call it other than a tragedy that's going to happen. I mean, even if they've escaped it so far, for people who have misinformation and think because I've been infected previously, I'm safe, they're sadly wrong in the face of Omicron. So I think we're going to see that.
And Greg, can I ask you, I just want to interrupt there. Do we know yet if Omicron, the severity of the illness is how it compares to the...
Yeah, this is where the modeling estimates begin to diverge, because on the one hand, we have data from South Africa, very different context, younger population, high previous infection rates, recent immunization programs. The US, an older population, much less infection, and an immunization program that started early, not late, and therefore is waning. So if you look at the best data that just came out, it literally is hot off the press from London, a context much more like our own.
Right.
They do not see a decrease in hospitalization or severity, but a much higher increase in transmissibility.
Okay.
That combination is what leads me to think, in our context in the US, we're going to see super spreading events. We're going to see devastation among the unvaccinated, and we're going to see high illness rates among those who were vaccinated but not boosted. Among the boosted, we're much less likely to see hospitalization or severe disease. My prediction is that we will see variant-focused vaccines coming in 2022. We'll see immunization down to age 6 months. We'll see a standard regimen being 3 doses of vaccine. And I don't think we're going to see equilibrization of the pandemic into 2024.
Okay. Well, in spite of what might be to come, which we are speculating on, we nonetheless are grateful. I've shared with you before that I love to ponder what I'm grateful for. I do so on the way to work in the morning. And my daughters also know that if we sit down to a meal together, they are very likely to be asked at the end 3 things that they are grateful for.
That's great.
So I'm going to ask you today. I'll tell you 3 things I'm grateful for in 2021, and then I'd love to hear from you.
Sure.
I have so many. I love doing this podcast with you. I am grateful for the opportunity of my job at Mayo Clinic that allows me to reach our listeners and to participate with you in this, which is so meaningful. I've been very open in sharing that I've gone through treatment for breast cancer this year, and I am delighted to be cancer-free and to be healthy and going healthy into 2022. And I am incredibly, incredibly grateful for the relationships in my life, of my children, of family members, of friends, of coworkers. There's so many things I could list.
Yeah.
Have you got 3 for us, Greg?
Yeah, it's so hard to confine it to 3. I am grateful for you, Helena, and your friendship and the work that we've done together. I am, people have asked me, gee, aren't you exhausted after 2 years of, and it literally has been 14 to 16 hour days. And I would say for the most part, I'm invigorated. This is an opportunity to do for health and get messages out that have been very hard. And in that context, I'm extraordinarily grateful, beyond privileged to be working at the Mayo Clinic.
Yes.
It is extraordinary the support that we have gotten from the clinic and the taking care of one another. I'm grateful for my family. And, we literally prayed for effective vaccines and we got them. There's very little reason for somebody with an otherwise normal immune system to actually die of COVID now. That was not the case just a scant year to 2 years ago. I mean, I'm so grateful for the pace of science, but also grateful for the fact that pandemics have purposes. They really do, philosophically, spiritually, and otherwise. And as I said, they point out where we've strayed. They point out where we are better off fixing our hopes and dreams. And in an odd way, I'm grateful for that.
And we are grateful for our listeners too, which is why we're going to sing to them right now, Greg. They might not thank us after they hear me sing.
Here we go. We wish you a happy new year. We wish you a happy new year. We wish you a happy new year and a healthy 22. We might get a lot of email that says,
I don't know what I was
jobs.
thinking. That's all I can say. But thanks for being here today, Greg, and happy
Thank
New
you.
Year.
Merry Christmas to you too.
We are so grateful to you, our listeners. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you learned something. I know that I did. We wish each of you a wonderful day and a very happy 2022.
Mayo Clinic Q&A is a production of the Mayo Clinic News Network and is available wherever you get and subscribe to your favorite podcasts. To see a list of all Mayo Clinic podcasts, visit newsnetwork.mayoclinic.org. Then